Hi, we are here for our Sustainable Week, and we are here with Brandon from Ecoalf, who is representing a sustainable fashion brand. So, Brandon, if you want to talk a bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator at Ecoalf. I started there about 2 years ago as an intern, so I create a lot of the content and help really think about how we're going to communicate new launches and new collections and new innovations for the brand. So I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit more about the company.
Yeah. So let's get straight into the interview.
Okay.
Can you explain the difference between fast fashion and sustainable fashion as you sell here at Ecoalf?
Yeah, so fast fashion I think is something that they mass produce, typically inexpensive, which means it's a little bit poor in quality. And they do that to follow the trends. So they produce it really quickly to follow the trends, and then after that, it's just out of fashion anymore. So I think sustainable fashion is a completely different business model that goes a lot more slowly. It's made with higher quality materials, particularly recycled and low impact materials. And it usually has a timeless design. So that allows it to last for the many seasons to come. It's not just the current season with the current trend. It's something that you can wear for this year, next year, and even 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's great. And what makes fast fashion so harmful? You already mentioned that it's a mass production, but tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's basically the mentality of buying things really quickly, consuming them, and then a month later, they're not in style anymore, so you just get rid of them.
Yeah.
And also, because it's inexpensive, it's typically poor in quality, so you only wear them 7 to 10 times, and then it's thrown out.
Okay.
So that's having a huge impact on the earth. For example, if you wear a t-shirt only 5 times, it is 400% more CO2 emissions that it generates compared to if you wear it 50 times.
Yeah.
So that's a huge amount of CO2 emissions just from constantly buying new clothing instead of wearing the same clothing that you already have.
Crazy. You already mentioned the CO2 production. And how much CO2 is produced by a sustainable shirt, and in comparison to that, to a fast fashion shirt?
It really depends on the material. We do a lot of studies to see the true impact behind all of our items. For example, we just carried out a full life cycle analysis on one of our sneakers. It actually achieved 4.85 kilograms of CO2 emissions. And to put that into perspective, the typical sneaker generates about 13.6. So it's about a third of the CO2 emissions. And when you think about how many pairs of shoes people buy across the entire world, it's a huge impact reducing it by that much. So one of our goals is to continue lowering our emissions and reach zero emissions.
And in which steps do these CO2 productions or emissions arise? And what are the differences in production of sustainable shirt and a fast fashion shirt?
Okay, usually the most contaminating process is actually the materials themselves, so it depends on the raw materials you choose. We usually opt for recycled materials or low impact materials, particularly in that shoe I was talking about. It's made with our ocean yarn. So that's actually made with plastic bottles collected from the bottom of the ocean. So what really lowers the emissions is that you don't have to use new polyester and create that, and that is very CO2 intensive. So that lowers emissions, and then also at the end of the life cycle, recycling it. So instead of throwing it out and going to landfill or incinerating it, if you're able to recycle the product, then it really lowers the CO2 emissions as well.
So you mentioned the plastic bottles you frequently use in your clothes. How is it that you go from a plastic bottle to a piece of clothing?
Yeah, it's a bit of a complicated process that took a few years of research and development, but basically we collect the bottles, so we separate them. When we collect all the waste from the bottom of the ocean, we separate it into different categories and different qualities, so glass, even if they're tires, for example, and then like the plastic. And then different types of plastic, we can only use the PET, which is a typical plastic bottle. And so with that, we grind it up into chips, so like flakes essentially, and then from those flakes, we turn them into little pellets. And then the pellets, we break them down into yarn, so they're spun into yarn. And then with that yarn, we can make accessories, we can make coats, and we're exploring what other things we can make with them. So we're really excited with the whole process.
So cool. You already said that fast fashion shirts are cheap. Why should consumers start buying sustainable produced shirts? Why is the higher price worth it?
Well, really, I think fast fashion, the issue is that it's lower in quality, and also it's more following the trends rather than a timeless piece you can wear over and over again. So realistically, even though the upfront cost for a sustainable item might be a bit more, realistically, you don't have to buy as often. So if you buy fast fashion, once a month, and then in a couple weeks, it's no longer wearable because it's poor quality and it's fallen apart. or it's no longer a trend, then you have to buy another shirt. So even if it's inexpensive at first, if you keep having to buy more and more shirts, in the end it's really not much cheaper than investing in one timeless shirt that you can wear forever.
Cool. On your website, you're not only showing the amount of CO2 that has been saved, but also how many liters of water. Why is this aspect so important, and how do you achieve that saving?
So what we do is we actually collaborated with a third party, and they analyze our whole life cycle analysis. So they analyze the materials we use, the production processes we use, and then it generates the impact. So for example, how many liters of water it took, how many CO2 emissions it generated, and then also how much it saved. So we have that next to each of the products on our website so people can understand that everything that they buy has an impact. Even if it's made with recycled materials, it still has an impact. So while our impact may be much lower, we really want consumers to understand that when they choose to buy an item, that they opt for the lowest impact possible, and they consume less but consume better.
Yeah, your transparency seems really important to you,
It's very
right?
important for us, yeah. It's huge, and our goal goes much beyond just lowering our impact, but we really want to change the fashion industry. We really want people to shop more sustainably, and really just change the way that we're consuming with the fast fashion model. So it's very important that consumers can understand the impact and really educate themselves on how to shop better and more sustainably.
Yeah, that's great.